Good morning and welcome to our second LinkedIn Live in our HR in Action series. We've got me, Jacqueline again. More importantly, we've got Jacqui. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi. I'm good, thank you. And how are you doing today?
I'm enjoying the cooler weather. I love the sun, but it is nice to be a little bit cooler, I won't lie. So, yes, thank you for joining us again. Obviously, our last session focusing on the probational period, kind of linking that into your day one worker rights there as well. And today we're looking at conflict. We all know conflict can have a massive impact on the bottom line, the culture, staff retention, everything really. So thank you for coming to share your insights again.
You're welcome.
Yes, I've had some great feedback from the previous LinkedIn Live, by the way, just about probation. So appreciate your time. And if anyone did miss that, like I say, just reach out, let us know. We'll send you the link. But I'm going to get straight to it today. And I want to know, well, in the workplace, what are the most common outcomes or situations that we can find ourselves in when we avoid dealing with it? So we know it's happening, it's there within our teams, or it might fix itself. It does it. What are the most common outcomes?
Well, I think, commonly people will avoid it because they don't want to make things worse, or they just fear conflict. And it's quite a cultural thing as well. The English are very much let's sort of all get along and not address stuff because there's a fear of making it worse. But actually, if we avoid it, that makes it worse. That in itself can just allow things to grow and to fester. And that can have a real negative impact on team morale. If we're allowing that conflict to exist either within the team or across teams, it just has that negative impact on the way people feel about working here and being part of this team. It can increase opportunities for gossip, for people to be unkind about others, and ultimately it breaks down trust. So we'll have decreased productivity because people are too busy gossiping and talking about what's going on over there kind of thing, or decrease in productivity because people are avoiding working together.
Collaboration.
That has a real negative impact. It can lead to absenteeism, or it can even lead to people leaving. And that's an example I've recently heard of. Somebody who's been really productive in his role for 5 years was promoted, and 2 years down the line he's now leaving, not because of anything other than he cannot get on with his new manager, and that's really hard for him. So he's stepping away from that environment, and he needs to do it for his own health and well-being. But ultimately that conflict could have been addressed a lot earlier and supported by the organisation to retain his skills. They've promoted him, so they can obviously see that he has a lot to add. But there's an investment in promotion. Well, let's invest some time in resolving whatever this conflict is.
That's really sad, and it's not just on the personal side. Other people are going to see that problem that's occurred. Maybe they're going to lose a little bit of trust in the process. As much as fraud is on the system, so much is in our brains, isn't it? It's experience, it's relationships. So you get that situation, and clearly something hasn't been addressed here. Whose responsibility is it to address that conflict? Where would you guide people to?
Well, in that scenario, it's two fairly senior people, but they did have somebody above them both who I feel could have supported them. I think that person did support them in as much as they listened to them and they gave them empathy and understanding, but they didn't actually encourage resolution. Okay. And I think it's really important to encourage people to talk and to get together, but to encourage them not just to get together to express their perspective, but to actually listen to understand the other person's perspective. And I regularly talk in my training about seeking to understand what's going on for the other person, how are they viewing this, and what do they need. So from you as a new manager in the organisation, what do you need to learn from this person who's been embedded for a few years? But what does that person need from you as a manager, and what do you need from him? And if there's a disconnect and a mismet expectations, which lots of conflict is driven by unmet expectations or different perspectives, different cultural backgrounds, different needs, without having that direct conversation, it all becomes about, well, it's all about them. It's their problem, not mine.
And everybody needs to be heard and listened to, don't they? And that on its own can solve a lot sometimes, because it gives you a different perspective that you maybe haven't considered. And with that, so those conversations and just sort of looking at a lot of this might be that direct line management support that's needed. Where would HR step in there? At what point, if you can see conflict, HR are probably aware, and if not, hopefully people are confident to make them aware. But where would HR step in? So I know when we were talking about probations last time, a lot of this, is for line managers, ideally to be running with. But in this scenario, is there a point that HR perhaps could have stepped in and helped guide and facilitate a safe environment?
Yeah, I think where HR can bring some real value to this is either, like you say, facilitate that conversation, be a mediator, mediate the conversation. If you've got good mediation skills, but it is a skill set and it is a separate skill set to HR. But I've seen lots of HR professionals take mediation training because it is such a key skill to have in the role, or bring in a third party mediator to help when things get so bad, then they can help and guide and bring in that neutral third party. But I think HR, they provide the policies and the support for dealing with behaviours and supporting people, but ultimately the line manager, the more senior line manager, should be the one to support the team. HR can coach the senior line manager in having those conversations so that they're again upskilling their senior leadership team to be able to hold these difficult conversations and hold space for people and give people support to actually dig into what's this really about. Because ultimately you'll have a conflict about they don't understand me and they don't understand me. But what that's really about is you both have different perspectives, different expectations. Let's understand that. Let's unpick that.
Have they been managed in the first place? Are they realistic expectations, I guess, as well? Some people have lines that others don't know about, in work parameters as well. We've all been included in projects that are maybe a little bit P&C for a while. And you never know what that other person's dealing with, do you? And so also, we've got that long-term impact that we've discussed. You could actually look at the conflict could result in losing quite a key member of staff. And if you're looking at a wider kind of picture in that, and we're talking about conflicts, I think, certainly in recruitment, we can have conversations with people, maybe they're experiencing quite high turnover. There's a role that's continuously, just that one role, it's not quite working, and you're trying to work out why. And when you really drill into it and you gain feedback, sometimes, unfortunately, it is because of culture and conflict. And we've seen directly, when speaking to people, what that can mean. And it's the bottom line, it's productivity. You lose clients, you lose trust. It's your Glassdoor reviews. It's a humongous thing, isn't it?
It's massive. And I Glassdoor is such a great observational piece, because people now, they can go on there, they can say exactly what they want about how they've been managed, how conflict is managed, what the culture's like. But sometimes it's really just one person's experience in one department where they might have poor behaviours being allowed to fester, things being allowed to get worse and not being addressed. But that can have a massive impact on the whole organisation. And people who are looking for roles now, they do access things like Glassdoor. So your reputation. But I think equally, people who are looking for suppliers, I've done it. When I'm looking for a supplier, anyone can write great copy on their website, but let me go and see what's on Glassdoor. Let me see how their people experience working there.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a job there, but I'm looking to work with organisations that share my values.
Yeah.
So that's a place where you can get that information. So the reputational damage can be quite big.
Yeah, really severe. And so obviously going to fall on the managers then, obviously with the support of HR in that background who can facilitate and coach. And as an individual, as a manager or a leader within an organisation, we covered this last time, didn't we? And I think sometimes it can be both parties that can really help. But what proactive steps? So, if we could list a few things, like a checklist, what proactive steps could somebody reasonably take? Because they're probably a little bit uncomfortable themselves, probably feeling quite unconfident about the situation because it's building and doesn't make anyone feel good. So what can they do?
So I think the first thing they need to do is be aware of the signs. If you know your people well, you know what they're like when they're in a good place. And if you start to spot that someone's behaviour seems to be changing, or their communication style has started to change, or they've started to avoid being around certain people, or they go really quiet in meetings where they used to be giving more and bringing more, then have a conversation, spot those initial kind of just key warning signs that something's not quite right here, and be open to listening. So it's, again, seek to understand, ask the right questions, seek to understand what's going on for both individuals. But then having that ability to bring that back round and to say, okay, I've heard what you've said, we need to address this quickly, but having very much a clear expectation, right? We're here to separate the person from the problem. So one thing I often say in my training is you have to make it about evidence. You've got to have your evidence of what you've witnessed. What are the things that you've seen that are causing you concern? Make it about that, not about the individual. So I've seen this, I feel this. It's not you did this. If I'm immediately saying you did, you said, it immediately creates defensiveness. It's very personal. So if you separate the person from the problem and seek to find a solution and a way forward, and it's not always possible to find agreement. Sometimes people will be very much, no, this is how I see it and that's how they see it. Well, let's find something that we can agree on, even if that's just the way forward, the way we work together.
And I was, sorry. I was going to say, I was having a chat with somebody recently, actually, who had to deal with some quite major conflict within their organisation. It's brilliant banter to that, age-old sort of debate that can be had, but create a lot of conflict. And actually there's some really risky situations that can occur because a company needs to be ensuring that they're doing the right things and have the right things in place. And I know certainly this individual, off the back of the situation that occurred, implemented training. So went to this HR manager across the whole organisation, because then you had a safety net. So if you've got the sort of conflicts that is caused by inappropriate banter, bullying in the workplace, it's been quite clear what would be appropriate, what wouldn't be appropriate. They can then roll it out. All the other employees felt confident to go and seek support from their managers because they have been told it's wrong. And if you do need to, unfortunately, come to the point of parting company, which we don't want to get to, but you do have to protect the core of your business. Actually, that training point, it opened doors for their staff in the trust, the security, and maybe it shone a light on the areas they needed to work on.
Yeah, and that helps to create a culture of safety for everybody. And I run training on equality and diversity as well, and it's very much about, let's look at what behaviours are acceptable and what aren't acceptable. And just like you say, I bring case study that shows, well, these people thought they were having fun, but the person they were having fun with didn't.
Yeah.
And ended up going through the courts and was found to have been discriminated against because of the banter that was going on in the department. So it creates that open dialogue and that communication. And then I get people to work through what behaviours are and aren't acceptable by talking through different behaviours that you see regularly in the workplace. Yeah. But by delivering that training, you encourage that open dialogue, and you encourage people to think, oh, I thought that was okay, but you didn't. Okay. But it also empowers people to say, when that happens to me, it's utterly okay for me to say I don't find that appropriate and I'm not happy with that. And from my perspective, that's when the line is drawn and you never cross that line again. You now know you've overstepped, step back, get safe, and create an environment where everyone can share how they feel. And when you do that, that's kind of the first step in creating a psychologically safe environment where people can be included and they can be themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and be honest and open.
Challenge our own way of thinking. What I might deem as appropriate, somebody may deem as not appropriate. But and if I'm sat in a room where someone's chatting about this and it isn't personal, it's not directed at me or anything like that, I'm more likely to go away and reflect and go, crikey, I really hope. And I would then maybe reach out to somebody and say, God, you know, I was in this training the other day and I just wanted to pick up on this conversation that we had. And it enables you to be a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are cultural differences and cultural expectations as well. So I worked with an organisation last year and it was online because some were in Finland and some were in Ireland and some were in Spain. We were all over Europe. And part of what I did was the people who were employed by the UK organisation, they went into a room and were talking about their cultural norms in terms of communication style, time management, and those kind of things, where we'll all have cultural norms that we just expect everyone to be like us. Yeah. And then there were more people in Finland, in the Finnish office, so they were in a breakout room talking about their expectations. Well, that was a little echo chamber. Everyone agreed with everybody. Going to the UK breakout room, they were really learning a lot. They were learning about people's communication and their needs and, you know, being direct or being softer. They learned a lot because they had 5-6 different backgrounds, upbringings coming into that. Yeah. That was social expectations, social norms while you're growing up in different environments.
So sometimes I think what we're hitting on here is that one way to prevent conflict is to prevent the inevitable. So even when you don't see conflict, even when you know there's no conflict in your organisation, that's probably the time to make sure that what you're doing is creating the culture. And so I think, you know, what we've spoken about there, what we've probably covered is quite a lot of techniques that you can do to maybe prevent conflict. But, you know, when you're looking at mediating conflicts who maybe have really different perspective and values, what advice can we give someone then?
Sorry, your sound went funny.
Oh, sorry. No, you're fine. So I was just saying, so when you have the situation, you've got two individuals with really different cultures, different values, and we're at a point of conflict. You know, what advice can we give to a manager then? Manager's manager who's going to have to support someone through that process. What's the advice there?
I've done this recently actually with a couple of people who have very different backgrounds, upbringings, expectations. Just sat them down one-to-one and got them to write out. You know, I was very much, write down what your expectations are in terms of communication, management style, how you like to be given feedback. And to the manager in that scenario, you write down exactly the same. Now stop.
Yeah.
And look at what your colleague has written and really take on board what your colleague has written. And in that scenario, the manager went, oh, that's really interesting, isn't it? It's like, yes, it is.
Brilliant.
Why didn't you ask the question? But hey, we're doing it now. But also, because it's written down, it feels less personal.
Okay. That's interesting. So that's quite an old school technique, isn't it? You say when you're stressed, write your thoughts down, write a list down.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that in the term of conflict resolution. And I work in recruitment. Of course, I've had, conflict in my time. And I've never really thought about the whole writing it down option.
It's one of the key things that I teach in my 12-month program when we do the conflict module. Well, when we do the performance management module, I teach the technique, but then bring it into the conflict module. It's very much about have the problem written down, because then it's not personal. It's not about you, it's not about them, it's about this thing that we need to get to grips with and get to agreement with. And we're not looking for the absence of conflict, because when you work in diverse organisations, there will be conflicting needs, conflicting expectations, conflicting beliefs and the way that we work and values. But the more that we can be open to exploring those, then we will bring in diversity of thought as well. It's not about living without conflict. There's conflict everywhere. I was just going to say, even at home, in the evenings, what we have for dinner, what are we watching on the telly, what are we going to do at the weekend? Those are all potentials for conflict, because you've got different needs. But you just discuss it openly and you think, oh, yeah, I thought we could do this. Oh, no, I'd like to do that. Well, then let's work together, collaborate on what are we going to do.
And maybe get something better.
Yeah.
Push it forward, collaborate.
You cannot have an organisation without conflict, because if you do, they are utterly standing still and probably going backwards because of it.
Yeah,
because
and from that
point, careful.
Probably looking at using it to create an opportunity, really, for managers, for organisations, to maybe reframe how we see this. Let's change our view. It's going to happen. It's going to be there. So actually, how can we push this to growth? How can we use that conflict that's probably kind of impacting our bottom line as a negative right now, and change that into, how do we move this to growth? So it is that a real opportunity? Have you seen that done? It sounds all perfect up here, doesn't it? Soft and fluffy. Let's change and do this. But have you seen it? Have you seen it occur?
I have seen it, because you get that, and it goes back to the session that I did last year, and sessions that I do regularly online with organisations that are from very diverse backgrounds, bringing people together to actually recognise that these things that they saw as difficult are actually strengths. And then it helps them to actually recognise, I do things this way, you do things that way. Let's collaboratively work together and bring the best of that and the best of this and work together. And I've been taken into organisations where they've had conflict between managers. One of the very first times I did this, and it was really me going out on a limb, but I thought, I'm going to do this. And two alpha men, I'm going to say it, very strong, opinionated men, senior leaders in the organisation, never spoke to each other, always avoided each other, never got on at all, hated each other. So I sat them next to each other in the training room, which didn't go down well when they walked in. And I said, just bear with me, just please sit where you've been placed, and it will all come to fruition in the end. And I gave them an activity to do where they were just writing down their expectations for each other.
Yeah.
And then share it. And then as I was walking around the room, one of the other people in the training said, excuse me, some guy said, never seen that before. And these two guys had their heads down together, working through, clearly in agreement, even though they were talking about what they disagree on. And at the end of the session, they stayed in the room to work through.
And how inspiring is that? You cannot have senior leaders of an organisation clashing. That's so impactful on culture. If your SLT team aren't in harmony or visibly in harmony, there's always going to be things behind the scenes, but visibly in harmony.
Be on the same page. And these two were just definitely, they were totally against each other. Every time they came into contact, it was blowing up. And I just want them to use this technique. Honestly, it's not about the two of you. It's about the situation. Just write it down, get it out there. And they utterly started to resolve things. They're never going to be great mates.
We don't need to be at work. It's a benefit. It's a bonus, isn't it? But we need to respect each other. And I guess respect and conflict and all of those. And do you think, and actually I think you hit a point now with these two individuals, these two senior managers. I mean, prior to that situation, you've got staff and who are in the training who could visibly see that these guys don't chat, they don't talk, there's a war. So what creates an environment of acceptable behaviour.
It does.
Yes. So it could have such a massive impact on the rest of the organisation and how they see fit to deal with it. And I guess influences really is here, isn't it? Whether we address or we ignore conflict.
And that, the way that conflict is addressed at that senior level, that then becomes the default behaviour, which again, going back to psychological safety, if you've got two senior people who are butting heads and ignoring each other when they can get away with it, and you see that that's the way that we approach things, it just, it can create that sense of it's not safe. It's not safe to be me. I don't want to be shouted at the way that they're shouting at each other. So stay away from that. Don't upset the apple cart. But then that creates an inner conflict. And that inner conflict is something you're not going to see, but it's going to make somebody leave. That inner turmoil where I don't feel safe here. I don't feel I belong. I don't feel that I can ask questions. I don't feel that I can challenge decisions because people shout each other down. I don't want to be in the firing line of that. I'm deeply uncomfortable with that. So move on.
Crushes creativity.
Absolutely crushes creativity.
And confidence. And confidence. And confidence is something that everyone struggles with. On imposter syndrome, whatever we want to call it, it's a massive thing. And I think this is a really interesting topic today. And I think it's so conversational. When you look at the title, Managing Conflict in the Workplace, can it impact the bottom line? It's quite black and white, isn't it? And I think it can, but the intricacies around it are quite emotionally led. You need to be aware. And I think that you need to be confident. You really need to be confident to be able to deal with this, which actually leads us on to what we're doing in our next LinkedIn Live, doesn't it? Nicely done. So where we're going to be looking at building confidence, because actually with all of the things that we're covering in this series, which was, your probation, which we've already done, today discussing conflict, let's look at that. And it's really important, actually, whenever the day one rights change, we're unsure at the moment, aren't we? They're changing on a daily basis from the government. Thank you very much. But we need to be confident to deal with conflict. That's going to be looking at maybe somebody's journey, whether we need to maybe end an employment early, whether we don't. Have we got the probation right? Is there any conflict that we can deal with in the probation period? Going back to the touch points. So next session, we are all about building confidence with line managers. And actually how this starts with you, which really, HR, we're talking to you right now. Your confidence has to be at an all-time high or at a certain point when you're trying to instill confidence in others. Your line managers need to be confident to deal with these topics. So, and then after that, we go on to a dignified exit, which will be really interesting. I'm quite looking forward to that one. Jacqui, thank you so much for today. You've been a star. You always are. I always love having a conversation with you about these topics, and really, really looking forward to the next one, actually.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's been fun. Looking forward to the next one too. See you soon.
See you soon.